Takeoff. Home point updated.
This video is about my experience using the DJI Mini Pro 4 to ActiveTrack myself as I ride in my road bicycle. I primarily bought the drone to use the ActiveTrack function to record cycling videos. Not a whole 20+ mile ride, but clips of maybe 2-minute footage, 30-second footage, 5-minute footage, 1-minute footage. I would not try to have the drone up in the air on a 20+ mile bike ride. I don't think it's capable of doing that without issues. So you'll see me using the drone active tracking on the same 1 mile loop that I used the drone to test active tracking on a vehicle. I'm going to do it on my bicycle, and then you also see where I crashed my drone. Yes, I crashed my drone on the 4th day of ownership, sent it in to DJI, and they sent me a replacement drone. I'll do a separate video about my experience with the DJI Refresh Care. And then you'll see my experience after I had 12 days off of not using the drone. I had plenty of time to think about better ways to use ActiveTrack. So once I got the drone back, I went back to ActiveTracking again with the experience that I gained from my first 4 days of ownership, and it did a much better job ActiveTracking. Now I understand the capabilities of this drone. This is the start of the 1 mile loop that I'm going to test the ActiveTrack on my bicycle. This is the same 1 mile loop that I tested ActiveTrack on my vehicle. This is a good test loop because it has 3 turns. It has tall houses that it has to avoid while making those turns. There's trees off to the side of the road. As you can see, there are light posts over the road. There are power lines over the road. And there are trees that overhang the road. The Mini Pro 4 is doing a very good job of tracking me here. As I learned since I've been using the Mini Pro 4, that it does well in open spaces as there's no trees off to the side or overhanging. But as you see now, I'm getting ready to approach some trees that are going to be overhanging the road. And that's when I start having problems with the tracking, because the Mini Pro 4 slows down due to the obstacle avoidance, trying to avoid having collision with these trees. And as I'm maintaining my speed, it's losing track of me because I'm maintaining my speed and it's slowing down. The gap between me and the drone is getting bigger than it loses track. First, I thought it might have been these power lines that were causing the issue, but as you see later on in the video, I determined it was not the power lines. It's trees that overhang the road, or canopy of trees that overhang the road. Not trees off to the side, but overhanging trees. So I restarted riding my bike, and I got the tracking locked back on me again. And as I take off, we got these overhanging trees again. Once again, the drone is slowing down and I'm speeding up because I'm slightly going downhill here. And the gap is increasing between me and the drone due to it trying to obstacle avoid these overhanging trees again. As you can see, when I get in this clear section past those overhanging trees, the drone speeds up to catch back up to me. It has no problem tracking at top speed when there are no obstacles to avoid. I was very impressed how the drone came around this corner. It flew above the trees, it avoided the house, and then this other corner that came very quickly after the first corner, it handled that well. It went above the sign, it avoided the house, it went above the tree again. And from this point to the end of the loop, the drone keeps track of me the whole time, the whole entire time. But as you can see, as I said earlier, the trees are not overhanging the street. They're off to the side. The drone is continuing to track me very well. I'm riding about 18 miles per hour. You can see the power lines that I'm approaching. The drone did very well flying underneath the power lines and maintaining the tracking. I'm back to where I started at, and as you can see, the drone tracked very well through the second half of the loop, mainly because there weren't any trees overhanging the road. It actually did very well underneath some power lines. I was impressed that I didn't have any problems, so I concluded the power lines were not the problem. I had my first crash with the DJI Mini Pro 4 right here. The drone flew into these tree branches ahead. The obstacle avoidance didn't sense them. It was damaged. I had a gimbal error, and the gimbal was stuck. I sent it back in to DJI, and they repaired it. I'll do a whole video about the DJI Carry Fresh experience later on. This is footage of me taking the drone out for the first time after getting it back repaired. I was 12 days without the drone, so I had plenty of time to think about how to make the ActiveTrack work better and more efficient. And a large part of it is planning your route. Try to minimize routes that have trees overhanging the road. That's, like I said, the #1 problem that I see that the drone has a problem tracking you on a bicycle with. And try to minimize power lines. If you can minimize those two things, the drone seems to hold track of you very well. Mini Pro 4 is doing very well maintaining track of me around each one of these right-hand turns. I have the camera motion set on to fast. When I crashed the drone that day, I had the camera motion set on to normal. I'm not sure how much difference it makes. The manual says fast makes the drone fly more dynamically, whatever that means. The last mode that I tried that I thought would be good for road cycling is focus track in the spotlight mode, where basically the drone acts as a tripod. You position the drone to hover in a certain place, and then you select subject scanning and lock it on the subject, and it will follow the subject without the drone actually moving. It'll just hover in place and it'll pivot around as the subject moves. I have the drone positioned in the center of this block. There's no houses built on this block. This block is basically an easement for the power lines. I thought this would be a good place for me to position the drone and test out spotlight as it could pivot as I go all the way around the block. You can see me make all 4 right-hand turns. The drone did very well tracking me in spotlight mode. After using a DJI Mini Pro 4 to ActiveTrack road cycling, I think it did a decent job, long as you're doing short clips, anything from 30 seconds to 5 minutes. It does not ActiveTrack well at all when there's tree canopies or trees overhanging the street. It slows down because of the obstacle avoidance. Then it loses track of you if you're maintaining the same speed. But if there's no trees overhanging, it does an excellent job picking up buildings, picking up signs, picking up poles. It doesn't really slow down too much for those things, so you can keep your speed and the drone will stay tracking you at that same speed. And the last part I'd like to tell you is how I mounted it, because the only thing I don't like about ActiveTrack is you got to carry the huge controller with you, and you got to have the controller because you won't be able to see if the drone lost track of you. So it's very important you have this controller. It'd be great if DJI can come out with some kind of wristband or some kind of beacon to put in your pocket so it can track you. But for now, we're stuck with carrying this controller. So how I mounted it on my bicycle, I bought a quad lock adapter that has 3M tape on the back. Here's a closer look at the adapter. I got it mounted up here on the back of the RC2 controller. Also, I put super glue on the back of the tape, and I have no problems. As you can see, I'm shaking it, just holding the quad lock adapter, and it's not giving up at all. So I was impressed with the strength of this quad lock adapter. So overall, I would recommend you can use this drone to track cycling, but don't expect to track an entire 20+ mile bike ride.